The NBA draft is just 2 days away, and with that, a lot of talk about the New Orleans Pelicans and their potential to trade up from 14 and trade their star in Zion Williamson. Michael, I know this is a subject you are very passionate about, so what's on your mind? What intrigues you most about this situation with Zion?
This is the hardest place to be in sports, is you recognize a player's talent, right? You recognize his ability. And as a coach, that ability doesn't always show up. And out of 308 games he's been eligible to play, he's only played in 114, right? Mm-hmm. And so all the people that say you can't trade him haven't really coached him. And there's always an excuse for why he can't get back on the court. I mean, this is a team that was in third place in the West when he was healthy. Pulls a hamstring. Never to be seen again in the rest of the year. I'm sure Willie Green, the head coach there, is probably saying, what can I do? Everybody who says you can't give up on him, he's too talented, has never been fired from dealing with a player that's talented that never plays. The people like myself that have counted on players that can't come through, we take the adage of what Bill Parcells says, which is simply when a player shows you who he is, believe him. Mm-hmm. And so all this conversation, it's driving me crazy because the defenders of Williamson don't understand what it takes to build a team. You can't have him as your leader if he's not going to be in shape and he's not going to work the hardest. I mean, Kobe Bryant says it so well. Why would I pass the ball to a guy that shows up 5 minutes before practice starts and leaves 5 minutes after? Like, why would I do that? So, like, I think New Orleans is at the point where, okay, it's over. It's part two. Everybody says maybe his behavior is because he doesn't want to play in New Orleans. Okay, then why did he sign the 5-year extension, Stormy?
Yeah, 5 years, $200 million nearly, that contract extension he took last season. And he wouldn't sign that if he didn't want to be there. They wouldn't sign him to that if they didn't believe that he could be a cornerstone type of a player still. And I think that's where the people from the outside looking in, Michael, continue to look at potential. And you talked about how good the Pelicans were when he was on the court. Like, you have to be fair to him from that standpoint that he is an incredible talent when he's out there on the court. But the old adage is the best ability is availability for a reason. And if you're continuously not available and on the court for your team, then where is your value? And that's where we keep on getting to this issue. And you talk about the injury history, playing only 114 games. That means he's missed 194. The injuries are numerous, as we had on the screen a moment ago. The right knee, the meniscus. He even had problems with his knee, by the way, in high school and in college. The hand, the right foot that kept him out for an entire season. And then the infamous hamstring that you referenced, where, remember the quote, Zion didn't feel like Zion. And what's interesting to me about his situation is that, like, you can be a pro without being a professional. And that's kind of how I feel about Zion, is that, like, he's a pro basketball player. He's in the NBA and he's very, very, very talented. But the preparation, the training, the diet, you talk about that contract, Michael, he has a clause in his contract that he has like a weight clause that he can't be over 295 pounds. Like, that to me just shows you right away that the team doesn't even, like, the team realizes how big of an issue that is with him.
You know, and that's the problem. I mean, when you criticize a player of Zion Williamson's skill set, people think you don't respect his talent. Oh, no, I respect his talent. I respect his game. The problem is I don't respect, as you said, his professionalism to the game. And I think anybody who sits there and says, oh, you can't give up on him. Here's what happens. Here's what would happen. If you gave up on him and traded him to another team, let's say you traded him to the Minnesota Timberwolves, where he's still the alpha male. He may have one good year and everybody will write 1,000 articles about what an idiot the Pelicans are for trading him. But once he has people back on his side, he's going to revert back to who he is. The only way this player ever becomes better than he needs to be is when he goes to a team that already has an alpha male. When he goes to a team like the Golden State Warriors, where they can demand from him because they demand of themselves. That's the same problem with Embiid. That's why Embiid needs Jimmy Butler next to him. That's why Zion would be would need a Jimmy Butler because he's not going to tolerate him taking 6 months off for a hamstring. It's hard to have your best player be the laziest player on your team.
For sure. But that exact scenario, Michael, is I think why there's that fear, right, of being the guy with egg on your face if Zion goes somewhere else and then has a ton of success, even if it is just that 1 year and it's a short-lived thing. Like you feel like you'd be kicking yourself if you lost out on the guy that he could be, right? But
Right.
as far as things go with the draft right now, the Pelicans reportedly would want Scoot Henderson to be the guy, which would mean they would have to trade up likely to 2 to the Charlotte Hornets in this year's draft. But the Hornets probably, at least from what I'm hearing and reading, they wouldn't want Zion. They would want Brandon Ingram. It's the Trailblazers that would be more interested in Zion, but would Scoot Henderson be available there? So I'm really, really curious to see how all this is going to play out come Thursday, because you got Bill Simmons from The Ringer specifically reporting that a reliable source of his did tell him that Zion's not going to be on the Pelicans come Thursday.
I think the Pelicans have had enough. And who could blame them, right? That's my point that's what's got me on the edge. And I don't understand why people don't recognize why the Pelicans are frustrated. Like, he may go somewhere else and have a good year. He's never going to have a long career. He's already told us that. His inability to want to get into shape, he's already declared who he is. So don't just grade the spikes, grade the whole entire career. Charlotte would be the worst place for him to go. I mean, that team, has got so many there's no discipline. There's no accountability on that team. I stayed at a hotel in Milwaukee that was apologizing for the air quality in their hotel because the Hornets had just stayed there.
Oh, no.
Wonder what they were doing in that hotel, right?
Oh,
so there's a lot of issues that go around the Charlotte Hornets that I think are problematic. That would be the worst place for a guy like Williamson to go. That would be the best place for New Orleans to send him because they would be guaranteed he would never really achieve his full potential.
They're 600 to 1 right now to win a title for a reason.
Yeah, I think there's so I think we get so caught up in this potential. I was talking to a guy in the NBA, and I asked him what side of the fence is he on this conversation. He said, well, I think it's hard. And he said, we have a coach here who thinks we should go get him. And I'm like, but that coach has never been fired before for a player with potential. Like, you only develop this layer of believing a player when you see him after you've gotten fired by. I'll tell you a story. We had Charles Woodson at the Raiders, and Woodson was an incredibly talented player. There's no question. But there was a period that Charles would admit to you today that he wasn't the best version of Charles Woodson based on his off-the-field behavior. And when he went to Green Bay and signed kind of a lower contract because he was having a hard time getting traction, because of his performance in Oakland. So many holding calls, so many grabs and pulls, that he stopped the off-the-field behavior, and he got himself in order, and he got his life back in order, and he became the talented player. That's what's going to have to happen to Zion.
And he's only 23 years old, so you would hope that, given how young he is, that he's still moldable in a way that he can improve and that he can get to that person and fix things. And the off the court stuff is real too, whether it be with his teammates or everything that's going on with social media right now that I know that the organization does not like, and what's happening with him off the court in addition to the basketball side of things. So he's got a lot going on in his life. And you hope for his sake and knowing the generational talent that he could be, that he starts to realize the importance of being in shape and being a part of a team.
But why does he have to, Stormy? Yeah. He's going to get $200 million for 5 years. Why does he have to? Yeah. Why does he have to have that wake-up call? Woodson had to have the wake-up call because the contracts weren't guaranteed. Where does fear do the work of reason for Williamson?
No, you're right. There's no rebuttal to that, because other than you would just hope internally and knowing the public perception of you being a bust would be enough to have that wake-up call, but perhaps not. There's another basketball topic I wanted to get in with you with Draymond Green, so maybe we can live that in this next segment here, because he declined his $27.5 million player option, but the Warriors still look like the most likely landing spot for him. So curious your opinion on that, as well as, like I mentioned earlier, there are some new prop markets that are opening up every single day in the NFL. So maybe some different ways that we can attack some of those things as well.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.